I think I made a mistake in my previous video by preempting myself and speaking about the last stanza of the poem. I think I was carried away by my enthusiasm, and this has always been my problem. I've never learned to curb my enthusiasm. Doesn't matter. I shall repeat some of the ideas I shared with you in my previous video. There is no doubt that the climax of the poem is the last stanza. The thematic trajectory of the poem attains its climax in the sixth stanza, in the last stanza. One cannot but be impressed by the accuracy of the evocation of the fox, by the immediacy of the evocation of the fox in the last stanza. The poet does not merely see the fox close up from close quarters, he also smells the fox. And through the poet, the reader does not merely see the fox, he also smells the foul smelling fox. The entire poem reeks with the foul smell of the fox. The olfactory appeal in the last stanza of the poem imparts a powerful dynamism to the poem and takes the thematic trajectory of the poem to unexpected heights. The fox, the thought fox, enters the head of the poet. The fox entering the lair represents the completion of the process of creating the poem. And the poem is at last ready for transfer to the blank page in front of the poet, and the poem is transferred and the poem is printed. Sudden, sharp, hot stink of fox. Sudden, sharp, hot stink of fox. We frequently speak at length of the sensuousness in the poetry of John Keats. What is this but sensuousness? I think that Ted Hughes competes vigorously with John Keats in the matter of sensuousness in poetry. The window is starless still, the clock ticks, the page is printed. What is the poet trying to convey through the very last two lines of the poem? My interpretation is that through the very last lines of the poem, the poet tries to highlight the significance of the poem for the poet in contrast to everything else in the world. The sun rises, the sun sets, the stars move in their orbits, night follows day and day follows night. The hands of the clock move relentlessly. The clock keeps on ticking. All these things are insignificant, trivial, immaterial to the poet. What is important to the poet is the poem. The page is printed. Through the closure of the poem, the poet emphasizes the significance of the poem in the existence of the poet and the insignificance of everything else in the world for the poet. That is why it is sometimes said that great poems are not written in ink, but in the heart's blood of the poet. The spectacular last stanza of the poem with its powerful physicality, with its pungent olfactory appeal, celebrates the excitement, the thrill, the ecstasy experienced by the poet at the point of writing the poem, celebrates the overwhelming experience of poetic creation. For the poet, nothing is as important as the poem. Not even life is as important as the poem. And he has now written it. I wish to point out that Keith Sagar, Keith M. Sagar, in his 1975 masterpiece, The Art of Ted Hughes, compares the poet producing the fox at the closure of the poem, producing the fox with all the characteristics of a living fox at the closure of the poem, to the magician's trick of pulling a kicking rabbit from a hat. You can mention this in any assignment you have to prepare on the thought fox, or any essay you have to write on the thought fox, or in any annotation of a passage from the thought fox, in which case you can include this point in your comment paragraph. Ted Hughes invites comparison as well as contrast with D.H. Lawrence as an animal poet. And eventually, I intend to engage a class, engage a full class on this matter.